We'll begin with a statement of our electronic meeting. Pursuant to Utah Code, West Valley City has determined that this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location given the ongoing novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. West Valley City has determined the pandemic presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at an anchor location. This meeting will be held electronically. Members of the press and public are invited to view this meeting live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/WVCTV. Public comment period will be had during this time for those who previously registered to get information on sign-in to the meeting. Thank you. With that, we call to order our meeting. We note that we have a quorum present. 6 members of the council present. It looks like, and I suspect our 7th member will join us shortly. With that, we have our Inside the City video series, and we'll ask them to play that now.
I'm Deputy Chief Robert Hamilton with the West Valley City Police Department. Today I got my first of 2 COVID-19 vaccines, which means that I've taken the first step and hopefully helping stop the spread and coming down with the illness myself. So with all of our first responders, all of our paramedics and firefighters, if we are able to all get this vaccine and get it done in a timely manner, hopefully we'll be able to be a little bit more effective in our jobs and not have to worry about unknowingly transmitting or succumbing to the illness.
Have you come back in 4 weeks for that second dose?
The experience was relatively, literally painless, except for the waiting in line. We had to wait in line for about 10 minutes, and then it was just like any other vaccine. Didn't feel anything less than some, like a flu shot, same as a flu shot. It wasn't painful at all. Looking forward, this feels like a really positive thing. Feels like we've taken a giant step in the fight against the pandemic. We finally turned a corner where we're going to be able to, effectively deal with this, and hopefully, continue dealing with it from here on out, like we do with the flu. It's always going to be around, but hopefully, with these vaccines, we're going to be able to get back to life as normal here in the next short term. That wasn't too bad.
This way, waiting areas on your right.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, though, even though they've gotten the shot, I think it's 5 to 7 days before it's fully effective. And so we'll continue, I'm sure, and Mr. Powell can correct me if I'm not correct, that we'll continue with our personal protection equipment during that time until everyone is fully covered, and go from there. Okay. With that then, let's see. We have our minutes of January 12th, and either a motion or a motion to amend and approve, or whatever you want to do.
I would move for approval of the minutes from January 12th, 2021.
Second.
Properly before us. Hearing no further comments, then without objection, we will consider the minutes approved. Hearing no objection, that passes unanimously. With that information, then we go to our public comment period. Nicole, how many people do we have signed up to speak?
We have 2 people signed up for the general public comment period, and then we do have 1 person for the public hearing on the agenda at the bottom there.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Then for our regular public comment, who will be first?
Jim Visock. Jim, you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
There we go.
Okay, I unmuted myself. I don't know if you can hear me. My internet
Yes.
is really bad out here. It seems like every time the council meeting starts out here, we must all be out here taking a bunch of bandwidth because it always acts up. Just for the record, I did watch the whole strategic plan meeting, and a few of the members I did text. I thought it was interesting when you guys were talking about surveys and stuff, and but we still use them. Code enforcement uses them. The fireworks thing that I brought up and Mr. Humes, Councilmember Humes brought up, that was about the safety issue because he was talking about the kids and the go-karts and the ATVs and stuff. So that's why I sent it to him on that. And if we're gonna look at doing something with them, maybe we can throw the fireworks things because there is no police department ability to cite minors for doing doing fireworks. And then let's see, what's the last thing I got? Oh, the YouTube view, the comments at the end. Normally, even on your study meetings, there's usually 7 to 8 viewing, and I don't know if that's a lot of you guys doing it or what, but that's a pretty standard number. So once again, I was glad to see the strategic plan meeting and all the things that the city's doing. Hopefully you guys are staying safe, staying strong. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Nicole, who's next?
We have Mike Rigdon. Mike, you should be able to unmute your microphone now and speak.
Hello?
Yes, you're
okay.
on.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for taking my question and my questions. And thank you for West Valley City for allowing citizens to have input. One of the greatest things we can do is to be actively involved in our community and making our city safe, making our streets safe, making pedestrians that walk on streets safe. I think that's the biggest question that I have on the 4100 South Highway. But moving on, and I guess a real big question that I have is, does West Valley City have a bicycle and pedestrian master plan? Haven't really had eyes and ears to see anything like that. The other question that I'd like to ask is, if not, how do we get this going as a city, and how can we get bicyclists, citizens, and how can we get more input on the safety of our streets? The speed on 4100 South is still way too fast, and I'm hopefully that after all of the computer problems that I have had trying to send out my last whatever it is, my petition, I guess, hopefully all the members received it and you were able to understand the drift. A lot of things that I have to say that I'm really thankful is when I go down 2700 West and I can ride my bike between 35th South and 45th South, on the east and west side of the streets going north and southbound are beautiful, constructed a highway. It's a city street. The state doesn't own that. And you guys have done a fantastic job of allowing citizens, bicyclists, and everybody else to use this particular street. My question is, why can't we do that with every street that we own in the city? That question needs to be answered. One of the things that I found out and more of the studies I've been doing is that You know, Salt Lake City, they entered what they call Bicycles Belong. And it's a group of funders that have millions of dollars that they give out to cities that qualify for, belonging. And it's FTA programs that are related to bicycle funding events. And the cities come down with standards. So Salt Lake City, when they started going into looking at this and developing bicycle lanes and roads, streets that they own, into making it mixed uses, is that they started out as bronze and they worked their way up years of people, citizens, and everybody being involved. And where they started out at bronze, they got to silver, they became gold. And the last time I heard, Salt Lake City is now a platinum member. And so this creates a lot of money to go to that city to help them develop and maintain and give money, extra money, to the cities when they just implement a master plan and put that plan to use and get citizens involved and get people being safe on the road. I am just, I just love the involvement that you have allowed me to have. And I love the ability to tell you how much I appreciate the work that you guys do, because I don't think you guys get that recognition. So thank you. And I hope you all you be safe and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe that was everyone.
Yes, sir.
And so then that's all the public comments. We turn to our city manager. Did you have anything you wanted to comment on at this time?
Nope, I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Council members, do you have anything you would like to comment on at this time? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which are the resolutions. Resolution 2108, adopting the legislative agenda for West Valley City for the state of Utah legislative session, which just started. For those who may be interested, there is an agenda that is attached that outlines the different issues relating to our legislative agenda. We've identified a number of issues that, not limited to those, but a number of issues that we would address here in our state. So that is the introduction to that. Any of you are welcome to comment on that additionally or make a motion.
Mayor, I move for approval of Resolution 2108.
Second?
Properly before us, hearing no further comments, then we will turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang.
Yes.
Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilman Hune.
Aye.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Let's see, next we have Resolution 21-09, adopting the federal legislative agenda for our city for the coming 2021-2022 legislative cycle in Washington, D.C. And again, there's some detailed information on the types of things that will be reviewed and worked on at the federal level, and that's attached to our agenda as a supporting document. To the council.
Move for approval of resolution 21-09.
Second.
Properly before us, hearing no further comments, to our city recorder.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, under our new business, we have application SMI-11 for 2020, filed by Stephen Flores, final plat approval for 2283 West, 3800 South. This is taking a current lot and dividing it into two. The first lot will be 10,900 square feet, the second 30,900 square feet. And it will be a flag lot where there's a stem that goes back to this property behind for another home to be built there. And this is fairly routine one, so I'll just stop there. To the council.
Okay, I would move for approval of application SMI-11-2020.
Second.
Properly before us, any further comments? Hearing none, to our city recorder.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
Mayor Bigelow.
I
Motion
voted
passes
for it.
unanimously.
Yeah, it's unanimous. I voted for it even though I don't like flag lots. So, but
I was gonna say.
okay. Next, we have application SMI 12 from 2020, filed by Tyler Bordero. Final plat approval for the Stegner Academy subdivision at 5990 West Parkway Boulevard. This particular piece of property is again being divided into two pieces. It's a 42-acre site. There will be a 6-acre lot created that will be for a new charter school. And then the other 36 acres will remain to be developed in the future. As a part of this, because this particular piece of property, those 6 acres are the front piece, they're putting in a roadway at the owner's expense back to the back property so that they will continue to have access to that for future development. And then, of course, this is right on Parkway Boulevard, so we'll begin some of the regular infrastructure improvements there the city will put in. With that, Ben, I think that's everything to the council.
Just to clarify, this is just an application for the plat division, the subdivision. There needs to be another application for the actual school building and stuff, right?
Yes, the development agreement will come at a later date.
Thank you. With that, I would move for approval of application SMI-12-2020.
Second.
Properly before us, any further comments? Hearing none, we'll turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Ling,
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we have under unfinished business that was delayed from last week, application ZT-9-2020. This is requesting a zone text change to allow properties with access and frontage on a street with 80-foot width. Currently, 100-foot width is already in statute. This would allow 80-foot width on frontage on a street where an exempt housing development is proposed. If you remember last week, the council graciously allowed me some time to go and actually take a tour, which I followed through with. I visited several of the existing properties as well as those that potentially could be considered. This is in conjunction with Ordinance 21-01, by the way, I get down to that point. Now, what I found as I went around and visited these sites and seen the existing properties that had been developed as senior housing, and they're very different from a normal high density project. These are clearly high density projects. But the difference is that most of these are seniors, older couples, and typically are just a couple. So where they have several of them where I went, they had garages or driveways. You didn't even see cars in the driveway because there were so few cars by comparison with driving down our residential streets where there are, depending on the street, a lot of cars. So I had them stop literally at the entrance to one of those and to just kind of watch and see traffic go by. This one happened to be on 48th West, where the old Valley View Drive-In was. After driving through it, we stopped there and I felt a lot more comfortable about traffic access. Now, as I discussed with staff, I said, how many locations are there in the city right now that if this ordinance were changed, that this would impact? And they identified specifically 12. Of those 12, of course, if we change this policy, not all of them would go into senior housing. But definitely, there's a possibility that they could, and a few very likely might. A couple of them I would imagine. Some of the others have already, though nothing official has been turned into the city, there have been inquiries about, single family homes, etc. Now, I actually became favorable to this recommendation under a couple of scenarios. Number one, because we only have 4 senior housing over 55 housing developments. And from what I understand, the information I'm given is that they are full and that people try and get into them and have to wait because they're very full. So I am favorable if on the 80-foot wide, if number one, that it does stay tied to over 55. Now, I was told by staff, and Wayne or someone on the staff can confirm this, that by changing that to exempt, it still limits it to 55 plus housing. And if staff would confirm that, because that makes a difference. I want a little bit more senior or over 55 housing in the city. because I think that we need more of that so that when people get to that point, they don't move out of the city. They don't want big yards. They don't want necessarily big houses, but they do want decent houses. So, and was there something else? I think those were the two items that I felt comfortable with. I really would like to see a little bit more senior housing. Now, that's just my viewpoint. That's not meant to do anything other than provide you information. And as we discuss this, Wayne, I need to confirm that one piece because it said staff changed it to exempt housing. Does that limit it to 55 plus, or is anything else included in that?
No, I believe you're correct, Mayor. I'm not the expert on this, so I'd have Mr. Pastor confirm that for me, but I think you're exactly right by design of how this was put forward. Is Steve on? Can you confirm that, Steve?
Yes, sir. This is Steve Patrick, and yes, senior housing is the only form of exempt housing.
Okay. This would still require them to come in with a development agreement as far as density, as far as, you know, how they build it, you know, all those different things. And the staff monitors that pretty closely. So with that introduction, now it didn't specifically state here, oh yes, it does, except public input, that we open this to public comment. Is there anything else that council wants to say before we open it to public comment? Because we do have one person that wants to speak. Hearing, oh, wait a minute. I saw some lips move. Okay, there we go.
All right. So one question I have, it says on here exempt housing as per CF, I got to get back there, I lost it. 24 CFR or any regulations that get changed from that. So where is that from, Steve? Is that a city ordinance or is that a state ordinance?
It's actually federal law. So as we discussed a few weeks ago, you can't have discrimination in housing except for, and that's why it's called exempt housing, is that you can, in the case of a senior housing development, you can discriminate based on age. But other than that, there's no other scenario where you can discriminate.
So where we're tying it to that regulation, is there any way of nailing that down if they change that we're not open to 45 and older or 25 and older? Or how can we make sure that what we're doing will be what we think we're doing?
Right. So the difficulty would be if we can't have housing in terms of any type of restriction on age. If the federal government changed their standard, we wouldn't be able to be more restrictive than what the federal government allowed. And so that's why we're pointing to the federal standard on the age restriction.
Okay. And then is there a way of tying this to the 12 properties that would be eligible right at this minute and have those be the only 12?
I can't think of, I mean, short of actually adopting some kind of specific new zone, I'm not sure how we could tie it only to these properties. I mean, these are the properties identified are ones that are vacant and that meet the criteria, meaning they have access and frontage on an 80-foot right-of-way. Technically, there are other properties that are developed that could redevelop, but those are a much less likely simply because it would involve redevelopment. So these are the ones we felt were the most likely given the fact that they're vacant properties. So again, to tie it just to those 12, we would have to, well, one possibility would be to say the properties have to currently be vacant. That might be one way to narrow it down, where that would narrow it to these 12 if we had that additional restriction.
Okay. I guess my question will be then if anybody has an issue if we added that to the proposed rezone document.
I
have a-
certainly don't. Go ahead.
A comment to that. To say that this applies only to properties that were vacant on such and such date puts a burden on the city and developers and property owners to figure out 10 years, 15, 20 years in the future what was vacant today. I wouldn't support that just because I think that it's unwieldy. And as far as the other question, the CFR is Code of Federal Regulations. And although it could change, I think it's really unlikely that it would change from anything other than senior housing because that's its purpose.
Now, I'm a little confused, Councilman Bueller. If they're vacant now and they develop single-family homes, it would no longer be vacant property, right? So it would be taken off the list.
Right. But it could possibly be a redevelopment project 40 years from now, and somebody would have to know whether it was vacant now or not. I just think it's unwieldy.
Fine either way. Anyway, go ahead. Any other questions or comments?
I think what we're saying is that it would have to be vacant at the time that they ask for the zone change. And so if it does develop to something else and then they want to come back and say, well, back in 2021, no, it's not vacant anymore. So if we just say we can only change this to this zone on vacant property.
But that sounds like we would allow someone to come in, buy the property, raise all the buildings, and then make an application where 100 acres where we didn't intend it to be that. We just thought we were talking about 12 parcels.
That's why I'd like the 12 parcels listed out so we know which ones they are and it just carries with the amendment.
Now, if I remember correctly, didn't this same issue, as Lars talked about, come up on a piece of property that was being redeveloped and they tore the building down and we had a requirement that it be vacant? I don't know if I'm using the right term, Mr. Pastrick, and they couldn't build on it because that rule was in place. And we had to go through some changes. So what does it mean when we say vacant?
I would interpret it to be that it's at the time of application, the property is vacant.
What if it wasn't vacant, but they tore everything down and now it's vacant?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure.
Sure. I think if we wanted it to be as of today, I think we would need to specify that it's vacant as of, at the time the ordinance is adopted, because it could become vacant in the future.
Okay. All right. Now, we haven't had the public comment yet. So we've had a good discussion. Any further comments before I take that public commenter?
If I may, Mayor,
yes.
As far as it tracking that, we could, as far as staff is concerned, basically just take a snapshot as of today and just include that in this application file. So we do have a record of, okay, what was vacant as of today. So that is, for in terms of a tracking perspective, that's something staff could do to track that.
Okay. Hearing no, oh, wait a minute. No further comments? Okay. Let me open the public comment portion of our meeting on this application and turn to Nicole to get the individual there online with me.
We have Mr. Randy Moore. Randy, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me, Council?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Bigelow, council members, good evening. I really appreciate you looking at this again. Mayor, I appreciate you going out and looking at these developments. You said you would, and you did, and I appreciate that because I think you really get a different feel when you go and look through the developments and you see what they are for. They're for seniors, they're for 55 and older, and I wanted to address a couple of questions and concerns that came up in your discussion here, so I appreciate that. I also want to stress that the Planning Commission, through their 2 meetings a year ago and then just a few months ago, both unanimously a year ago, and then all but one a couple of months ago voted in favor of this. So 2 questions that I heard in your discussion is still a concern as to whether this can change, that properties could maybe in the future move away from this 55 or older designation. That's highly unlikely. It has not happened in the 4 developments that have been in the city so far. I think you can look to those to see the CC&Rs for the development are specifically geared in that direction. The developments are marketed as a 55 and older. So if it transitioned from that, we would have to, a developer would have to, we'd eventually turn it over to the HOA, and then the HOA is really the one that's going to deal with that in the future. And I highly doubt they would move from that. It would upset the residents tremendously. So it has not happened so far, and I don't see it happen in the future. So just as further, there is federal requirements of that to maintain it. And also, like I say, the CC&Rs are specific to that. So there is that. As far as vacant properties, I don't really have a concern either way. I don't see a rush of properties coming for this zone. There have only been 4. The last one, I think, I may be wrong, was approved before the 2008 recession. The Majestic Villas on 7200 was approved many years ago. There's been an opportunity on 100-foot right-of-ways for these types of developments to come, and none of them have come. So if the desire was there from developers or our landowners for them to come, I think you would have seen many of them coming forward. The reason they really don't is the density is lower than what a townhome or another type of development would be. And so they're less viable in terms of land value and ability to develop. But I believe that this change would give an extremely narrow ability for a couple of these developments to come forward. I don't see that a tremendous amount would come. It may result in none coming forward, but at least I think, Mayor, you hit it pretty close that it's possible that a couple of these could come forward, and that's even assuming that land is available. Not all of these 12 parcels are on the market or wanting to be sold at this time. Maybe none of them are. So that would depend on land availability. But if you want to somehow identify them, I don't have an issue there. I don't quite understand the vacant designation. I mean, they're not going to develop if they're not vacant. if they're homes, they're going to stay as homes. So the land's got to be vacant to really come forward. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. I would ask that you approve this change. It's extremely narrow, and it really would serve a great need for the older empty nester citizens and residents in the community. And Mayor, you did hit it right. I've looked through availability of even existing units for sale, and the 2 or 3 existing projects I've looked at, there's none on the market right now. So I would urge you to approve it and be happy to answer any other questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Moore? Hearing none, I'll close the public comment portion and bring it back to the council.
So I would move for approval of ordinance 21-01.
Second.
Correct? Wait, I was going to put with
Okay,
a
put your
vacant,
caveat.
with the statement in there that we have the vacant properties now and have staff take this snapshot and put that with the ordinance.
Second.
Properly, before it's any further comments.
I'm not sure that we need that extra amendment, because I'm just thinking, maybe there are some areas that we wouldn't mind being redeveloped into this exemption housing, and that would be an improvement. And I don't want to limit that. Any zone change would have to come before the council anyway. And so if there is a redevelopment that we don't think is right, we could still say no, even if this does pass without that restriction.
I just think it makes it easier for staff, and it makes it easier for us to make sure that we've done our due diligence and no property passes through that we don't perceive as being a problem. And I truly think it just makes it easier for the developers to know what we want. If there is this fantastic development that comes in 6 years, we have the ability to change like we are here. And I see it better as a precaution instead of just open the floodgates and not see what this does to us on the long-term scale.
Any further comments? Hearing none, we'll turn to our city recorder for the roll call vote.
And just to be clear, Mayor, we're voting on the ordinance with the amendment proposed.
Yes, ordinance 21-01 with an amendment for vacant and having staff record that and place it with the information at the city. Did I get that right, Councilwoman?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Councilman Nordfelt,
No.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Bueller,
No.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Fitisamanu,
No.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes by majority.
Interesting. We do not have a need for a closed session. And so that completes our agenda. Any final comments before we adjourn? Everyone continue to stay safe and healthy and happy. And don't let the legislature starting worry you at all. It's not Washington, D.C. That's the, sorry. I just can't believe Washington, D.C. Anyway. With that, then, a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Without objection, we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objection, the voting is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.